I really think you're going to enjoy the next podcast presentation, YouTube, that we did with a gentleman that's been around the game a long time. His name is Greg Kampe. I coached alongside him. I was a women's coach when he was a men's coach at Oakland University. Coach Kampe's been in college coaching for 46 years. Been a head college coach for 40 years. So he's been around the block. He's seen things, and I think you're going to appreciate his insight. He took Oakland University from when they were Division II to now Division I. So he went through the growing pains of recognition, name recognition, to facilities, and they're still, in an uphill battle to create it where he wants it to be, but it's light years from what it was. The university itself has grown in that they put the university athletics kind of on the front porch to let people know what they're about. He's had multiple NBA players. Mike Malone, who just won the NBA championship with the Denver Nuggets, was a former coach on staff. He has a wide range of varieties. He's in multiple Hall of Fames. He's won just a lot of games. He's competed, and he's taken Oakland from where it was to where it is today. I think you're going to enjoy his comment. All right, I'm with Greg Kampe. We just went through the introduction, talking about more old man in the gym, on the road with Bob Taylor, and how to find the holy grail to improve youth basketball. This is Greg Kampe. I've already introduced him. This is 39th year? 40th year, the longest active coach in the country. And Greg, just tell them just a little bit about yourself that I didn't say in the
well, I didn't say the introduction,
right?
But like Bob said, this is my 40th year as the head coach at Oakland University. It's my 46th year of college basketball. I'd like to think I started when I was 10, but probably not true. I think I've seen it all. The creation of the game. I've stayed at one university where I had an opportunity to watch a university grow. From when I got here, we were 8,000 students, and now we're 20,000. I got to coach with Bob for years when he was here at Oakland. I've met a lot of great people in the game, and the game has taken me places that I never thought I'd go in life. To Europe, to Italy, to France, to everywhere, all because of basketball. And so I do think I have a little bit of knowledge about, what's going on and how it's changed, and maybe a perspective that we can get at today.
Okay, appreciate it. I'm trying to go to more the youth-driven. When I got out of coaching, I started coaching my own kids' team, and my daughter was a 5th grader. And I would come home, and I would keep telling Chris, this crap's not going to work. There's no way this can work. Like, I didn't see how it could work, and I'm quite a bit older than my wife, and I'm from a different thing, but everything to me seemed to be very organized, very robotic, very stoic. Like when I was coaching the team, we would have more games and practice, which is something I'd like to talk about. But I had to get ready to play against a press, a zone, an out-of-bounds play. So everything was tactic-driven. And I was older, and I remember the playground in the driveway. And a good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, Don Meyer, he was, he had the cancer, and he's in hospice. And I said, Don, I just don't think you can coach kids like this. I don't see how it's going to help them. And he said, Bob, everything's fought with a great resistance. Youth basketball is $1 billion business. And so what I'm trying to do in my travels is to find a better way to do it for the parents. What a college coach has been there for 40 years. Okay, these were good things that happened. These were bad things that happened. Here's what I would do different if you're the king of basketball. And you could say, okay, one of the things I felt was, and Coach Daly actually said it to me once when he got back from Barcelona, is Europe has a blueprint. They have a blueprint kind of how they want to develop players, but I'm not sure what the blueprint is in America. So if we're going to say a blueprint, let's try to get a blueprint for how you would teach kids to become a better player, or what you see is different in the players that you would like to see them improve? Some things have happened that are better, but some things that maybe you'd like to see improve.
Well, my experience with youth is more in baseball, in that I had 3 boys. My oldest son and went to the University of Cincinnati on a baseball scholarship. My middle son,
Keith, right?
Keith.
All right.
My oldest son, Keith. My middle son, Branch, played football at LSU. And my youngest son, who went through sports, is a musician who's trying to make it in LA and doing okay out there. But I coached them in baseball until they were 13, because NCAA rules won't allow, after they're 13 years old, at that time of the rule where they became a recruitable athlete. And so I had to stop coaching them. I coached them in basketball and baseball. And I had a 12-year-old baseball team that when they all got to college, of the 13 guys we had on the roster, 11 of them got scholarships to play college baseball. And so you might say, well, you got the cream of the crop. Well, the funny story is, this is how I got the team. Rick Reed, who's passed away, was an umpire, and Rick lived in my neighborhood. Okay, and he came to my house and he said his son Tyler just didn't nobody they went to the Little League tryout and he didn't get picked, and so they don't have a team. And he goes, would you start a team and have your son on it, and I could put my younger son on it also, and coach him, and let's have this team? And I said, oh, Rick, if you help me. He goes, no, I can't, because I'm gone. I'm umpiring during the season, major league umpire. He goes, but I would trust you. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I said, who's the team? He goes, well, I've got the list of all the kids that were cut. So we took that team and all those kids that were cut and went from age 10 years, maybe it was 8, but I think it was 10, for 3 years I coached them, and then 5 years later, when they were 18, they all got scholarships. And we won a lot of baseball games, but I think the reason we did, Bob, is because I think you and I have the same philosophy. I've read your book. We had the same philosophy of what we tried to do was make each one of them better. And the first thing we had to teach them how to do is steal a base. How do you steal a base? The second thing we had to teach them to do is, how do you field a ground ball? How do you catch a fly ball? And we spent all our time on the fundamentals of individually. You know, we didn't play games in practice. We didn't. And then when they were, I think it was 8 years old, because when they were 8, we said we're only going to play 15 games. And then when they were 9, we said we'll move it to 20. And now if you look around, there are 9 and 10-year-old baseball players that are playing 100 games in a summer, and they're flying all over the country. And we said, nope, we're not doing that. Then when I told them the goal is, when we're 12 years old, to go to Cooperstown and play in that great big tournament at Cooperstown, and that'll be our first experience of playing it, you know, not in our area. And we moved up 10 games every year. And so the emphasis and the focus was not on games. The emphasis and the focus was learning the fundamentals of playing baseball. In basketball, I tried to do the same thing, but I couldn't, because of the recruiting for my job and things like that. I couldn't really spend the time in basketball that I could in baseball with them. And so I had help with that, but I tried to put those same guidelines in as they grew up. Only these games. We're not traveling all over. We're trying to learn to play the fundamental, so that we're going to create a good player. Because in any sport, if you put good players out there, you're going to win games. And the results are going to be much better than taking players and just trying to teach them how to run an offense, or how to, you know, play a special defense, or how to beat a press, or how to, you know, those types of things. If you teach them the fundamentals, they'll be able to do those things on their own. And I know you and I both agree on that, you know, if I can teach a 10-year-old kid how to dribble a basketball, how to, you know, face up and go by somebody, how to do the drills that turn you into a good ball handler, you're going to be able to beat a press. You're going to be able to dribble by people. You're going to be able to create space and get into the lane. You're going to be able to do things to help your team. I think you can go through every fundamental there is in the game. We never, with baseball, we never had our pitchers, we never taught our pitchers to throw a curveball or anything like that. We tried to teach them to throw strikes. It doesn't matter what kind of pitch it is. Let's learn to throw strikes first. 4 of those kids pitched Division I college baseball.
I love it.
And remember, these were the kids that were cut.
Oh, I know.
One of them, who became our best pitcher, pitched for Western Michigan. And that's a pretty high level of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all just learn how to throw a strike. Forget the change up and the fastball and that. And then once they learned how to throw a strike, okay, let's learn how to change speeds. Let's learn how to, all right, you're getting pretty good that you can throw the ball over the corner of the plate there. All right, let's try and throw it now as hard as you can, and then almost as hard as you can, and then maybe half of what you can. Just, okay, learn the fundamentals. And as you get older and stronger, let a pitching coach teach you how to throw pitches, a curve, or, let's bring in professionals to do that. But at the youth level, learn the basic fundamentals.
That's very similar. We had a very similar, we had a team, there's a guy named John Karras, who was Alton Dow's grandson, who played tennis on the circuit, played tennis at USC. And he was always, his dad, Pete, was an old kind of codger. He was a good guy. And John was playing a guy that was just hitting moonballs. So John started hitting the moonballs back. So Pete pulled him off the court and said, no, you're going to play the right way. And that kind of tactical stuff is going to go away. When I started coaching my daughter's Ellie's team, John was a big influence on us as far as, hey, we're worried about high school. We're not really worried about 5th or 6th grade. So there was a team in town called the Magic that had all the uniforms and all the garb. And they would beat us by 25, 30 points in 5th and 6th grade. My wife, Chris, would go, you're not pressing them, you're backing down, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. And that's when I kind of said it wasn't going to work. We just kind of taught them the same thing with basketball guard. They would press us, they'd trap us, and they would trap us. And then they know that we couldn't throw it all the way over to the other person, so they would take all 3 people, and then they would, well, we're just going to stay on the same line. And then in 7th grade, it's kind of even. 8th grade, we beat them by 25 points. We won the AU state championship. Everyone made varsity as a freshman, and everyone played in college. So it's a very similar, and I think this is the perspective that I want the coaches and the youth parents to hear out there, is the best team isn't necessarily the winning team, but the best team is going to develop the players. Like I said, I've written a second book. It's almost done. My daughter Maisie, God bless her, is putting it out. But I think there's a fork in the road of player development or winning at grade level. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about with baseball, right? You were player development.
The winning takes care of itself. If you're worried about the winning, you're going to hurt your young man or young daughter's development into becoming. The key for any young player, in my opinion, after 46 years in this business, is they gotta love it. And if they don't love it, they're not going to do the work that they have to do to become great. And the work that they have to do is individual, fundamental improvement. Because when they get to me, if they can't shoot, they're not going to play. If they can't rebound, they're not going to play. If they might have been the biggest, strongest 12-year-old that ever was and dominated, but when they get to, don't forget, when you're a freshman in college at 18 years old, you're playing against 22 and 23-year-olds. So it's not, you've got to separate size and all that kind of stuff when they're young and make sure they're learning and make sure they understand what the fundamentals are that are going to make them successful. Our youth basketball camp that we had this week, I told the parents in the opening meeting, this is not a competition camp. This is a camp that we're going to spend a lot of, the first thing we're going to do is put you through the pro combine, and they're all looking. So you have a number. And then we gave them what the Pro Combine numbers were this year. So now, as a 9-year-old, obviously you don't have a 38-inch vertical jump. But what is your vertical jump? Why are these things important? Because this is what the pros deem important, right? So how are you going to improve to be able to have those numbers change over every year? So we gave them all those numbers, and then we told them that we videoed their shot, the fundamentals of their shot, and we put it in a loop with Steph Curry's. So you have your shot and you have Steph Curry's shot, and you can look at that every day. And then what we tried to teach them isn't, hey, let's go play Lightning. Let's go see who can win and get a ribbon for that. What we tried to do is teach them, okay, watch this. Now, how do you fix it? Because if you're going to become great, your son RJ, I guarantee you spent hours and hours on a court by himself. And it's like a golf swing. If you've got a bad golf swing and you keep hitting it, all you're doing is improving, getting worse, right? So you've got to know how to fix it. You've got to know what it feels like. You've got to be able to visualize and see the ball release. Those are the things that when you're, most kids, they're not strong enough to shoot a shot, so they develop bad habits when they're really young. They're just happy if they get it to the rim when they're 6 years old or 7 years old. And okay, that's great, but let's teach them, even if it's way lower and you got to push it, let's teach the hand on the ball. Let's teach the proper way. And as they grow and get stronger and better, they can turn it into the perfect shot. But if all you're worried about is what team he's on and are they going to win in that, they're not going to spend the time. All old coaches, we all have sayings that we latch on to and we use. And one of the things I tell my team 30 times a week, probably, maybe this month, is everyone wants to be great until they find out what they have to do to become great. And if you really want to help your child, and you really, they have the dreams of becoming great, they love it, they want to be good, and they want to get a scholarship and things like that, it's incumbent on you to keep them, grounded and understand you're going to get there through individual hard work, individual work on fundamentals. The games mean nothing. I've never recruited a young man and said, how did your 5th grade team do? How did your 7th grade team do? How did your 9th grade team do? I've never asked that question. I'm really concerned about how they did their senior year, and were they good enough. If there's only 5 people on a basketball court, if you're good enough to play for me, you better be good enough to help a high school team win game. You don't have to be 30-0, but you've got to have a winning team, because you've developed into the type of player that can win games for that team. So your concern about, as a player, and I'm sure you did too as a player, I won a lot of trophies and things like that growing up in high school and middle school and stuff like that. Couldn't tell you where those trophies are. Mm-hmm. And another thing I can tell you, now, not one person has ever asked me in my life, were you all league? Were you, did you win the AAU 5th grade championship? Did you make the all tournament team? Nobody's ever asked me that. I have been asked, what bowl game did I play? I was a football player in college. What bowl game did you play in? I was asked, did you play in the NCAA tournament in basketball? I've been asked those questions. Nobody's ever said, hey, in 10th grade, were you first team all Western Buckeye League? Nobody's ever asked that. So the things that are important in the moment really aren't important. And what you have to do is be able to pull that aside. I'd read his book. I'm telling you, his book gives you a tremendous game plan, a tremendous avenue of a way to get and help your child become the best that they can be. And that's all you can ask.
And well, I appreciate the kudos to the book. And the second book I'm writing is more, I think you told me once, the second book, a lot of times is more insightful, but I'm more gearing it to the youth coach and the youth parent, because I really believe the parent is key. I think a lot of parents today have just become what I call the Uber driver and the ATM machine. They're just kind of dropping them off, they're picking them up. And what I was able to do was spend a little bit more time. So when I coached my daughter's teams I told you about, they would always come out and they would play in the driveway. And I found they were having more fun in the driveway. But player development, Dean Lockwood and I were just talking about this. We were at a clinic once with Coach Wooden, the coach at UCLA, that a lot of times people don't know him as much as probably they should. But they asked Coach Wooden a question. He said, what are the hardest teams for you to play against? He said, the ones with the good players. Those are the hardest ones to play against. And I think that's kind of what we're saying. We want to develop them. But where I want to go even is when I started coaching, when I got out of coaching at Northwood, I ran this thing called the Midland Basketball Academy. We had 28 teams and things were going pretty good. And they got 2 practices a week. And then they got 1 training with me. And I started out, okay, I want to coach them like high school kids. You know what I mean? I'm going to start getting them like college kids. And we did all the stuff. And then last 10 minutes, I'm saying, okay, we're going to let them scrimmage. They couldn't scrimmage for the life of them. They couldn't scrimmage. So then I started feeling like we're making a lot of progress. I went to 20, 30. Then I went the whole hour with scrimmaging. But I was teaching them in ways I'd like to talk to you about how we did it. But we would just scrimmage. And it was Plato said, if you teach this generation like you taught the last generation, you rob them of their future. And I think a lot of the parents were thinking, well, I used to play in my driveway all the time. I'm going to give these kids some fundamental but these kids haven't been playing. They don't go to the park. They don't go to the playground. They don't do that. So when I was in 7th grade, now I was never fortunate to win trophies like you did. I mean, the first time I think I ever had a jersey was 7th grade in a little town in Sparta. But the coaches, we played in this little park called Rogers Park. There's 2 gyms, older kids, younger kids, older adults, so whatever. And we just constantly played. So the coaches, our middle school coaches, thought we were playground hot dogs. And they just, fundamentals, and we were playing out there and we're doing this stuff, and it was probably good, but we had what I call the instincts in the field from the park and the playground, where I think now these kids get the fundamentals, but they haven't played. They don't know how. It's almost like, I used the analogy once, they don't know how to, a screwdriver or a hammer, they don't know which one, but they don't know which one to use at the right time. You know what I mean? They become very robotic, in my opinion. They became very sterile, if you ask me. They couldn't really create things. They were used to, I wrote an article for BCAM a while back, and I said, I'll bet you most freshmen coming into high school have learned 10 to 15 out of bounds plays, and a lot of them haven't played one-on-one yet. These 5th graders, they haven't played one-on-one.
And more importantly, guard one-on-one.
And we try to say play one-on-one, and yeah, right. And any time that I worked with the young kids, we always, if we were playing one-on-one, we talked about offense and defense, like second step cutoffs, don't step over, use a shot fake, stay down on a shot fake. So I don't know if you've seen a difference in the athletes. What I'm going to say, I call it the if factor. One of the if factors to me is they have instincts and feel. They just get it. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed over time is the advent of the personal trainer and I got to get and so those people, and I'm not going to criticize them. Some are probably really good, but those people, you're going to pay them money, so they got to come up with stuff that's unique and different, but there is nothing unique and different about the game of basketball. It's been around a long time. Many smart people have taught it, and I do think one of the things you just said about the playground, I grew up in an era where basketball camps were just starting and they were outside. Mm-hmm. I worked at the McCracken basketball camp in Indiana, and there were 6 courts outside, and we were playing in 90-degree weather, and you wanted to be out there. Go jump in the lake, put your clothes back on, come back and play more. And that mindset is gone, you know. And one of the things you talk about is, you know, that toughness of what you just said about playground hot dog or whatever. That's what I would want, because that's a person that went out and loves the game. If they're out there in 90-degree heat and they're talking and they're, you know, and they're pushing and shoving and they're competing and learning how to compete, that's the kid. As a college coach now, boy, I'd take that kid any day. And, you know, that's gone. That's really gone. There's just, I believe that many parents are bubble wrapping their kids.
What do you mean by bubble wrapping?
Well, if you have something that's very meaningful to you and you don't want it to break, you don't want anything bad to happen, you bubble wrap it, right?
Like an elevator.
Yeah. Well,
gotcha.
Let's say you're gonna drive. You got this piece of fine china that you've had.
I got. Yeah.
And
They're protecting them.
Yeah, they protect you, and so they bubble wrap you so that even if you fall, you're gonna bounce right back up, and they're there for you to do I've had freshmen come in and I just want them to go to the student union and get their ID picture taken, and I have no idea how to do it. I got to do what? You know, because their whole life, mom or dad is, I'll do that for you. Don't worry about it. We'll get that. You just keep doing, you know, and so one of the things that they have to do to be great is fail. You cannot be great without failing. Winning is hard. Becoming great is hard. You have to fail. You have to feel failure. You have to deal with failure. You have to pick yourself up, not somebody else pick you up. You have to pick yourself up and want to come back. If everybody's picking you up, well, you know, okay, I'll keep going. If you've got to pick yourself up, then you've got to make that decision as you're getting up. Do I really want to keep doing this? And so that, I just call it bubble wrapped. You know, it's to me the biggest change I've seen in the last 15 years is the way, you know, everybody's doing everything for these young men and women, and it's killing them. It's really, really hurting them.
That's interesting. When I was at Midland, and we had 3 kids at the Midland Montessori School, and it's the first time you didn't have to be potty trained, so RJ could go, and they had a kindergarten, so Ellie could go. So they gave me such an unbelievable rate. I said, I gotta help you somehow. You know how? They said, well, we have a board member seat. So I was on the board of directors of the Midland Montessori School. But one thing I'll never forget about it, I'm carrying Ellie through the door, and Miss Debbie is about this tall, and she gives me this ugly look, like, what are you doing? I'm taking my kid first day of school. She goes, why would you ever carry somebody through a door that can open it themselves? That's the worst thing I've ever seen. I felt like this tall, you know. And the Montessori, like I wrote in my book, and particularly in the second book, how much the Montessori philosophy kind of influenced what I do with my own kids. It's sort of like, you know, what you're saying is the worst thing you can do for somebody is something they can and should do for themselves. My wife is a 4th grade teacher in Freeland, and she's on a committee how to teach kids how to cope. They got this whole thing about it, you know, how to cope. And I'd be like, send them to the playground. We all coped out there, you know what I mean? We picked teams, we got along.
You're the last guy picked. What are you going to do about it? Make sure you get better so you're not the last guy picked.
What's next? Or so-and-so's picking on me. Or,
right. And I trust me, I had 3 boys, and I love those 3 boys as much as any of you love your kid. There's no question. But at some point you have to learn that in sports now. I'm not saying in life, but in sports, you have to learn to let them fail. You have to, because without it, there's never a championship team that didn't fail. Michael Jordan failed and failed and failed and couldn't beat the Pistons, and then they did, and he won 6 championships. Nobody remembers all the failure. Kobe failed. Shaq failed. The Boston Celtics, Larry Bird and those guys couldn't beat the Lakers, and then they did, and then the Lakers couldn't beat them. You have to fail, and you have to let your kids fail. And it hurts, and you don't want to see it, but trust me, you're doing them a favor.
Yeah. See, like in my second book, in my first book I did it, I had the star. Every day in the youth practices, I felt we should teach toughness. You know, and we always tried to put them to a position where they did fail. Like we would give them a shooting thing, and I was basically, every time my kid did something that was different from my generation, I had to write a check. I had to write a check. I had to write a check. So I said, you know what? If I'm going to write this check, I expect you to do it 3 times on your own, or else I'm not going to write the check. And I thought it built an accountability, you know, it built a thing of work. And then I developed this, got this program called True Shooting. And it goes in, but the E is engaged, and there's 8 to 10, I think I've had a couple different books, now I think we're at 10, where they have to beat the score to the left before they can rate the score to the right. So if they got, say, Mikins in a row, they got 50. Well, they couldn't write the next number down until they got to at least 51, but they had to keep going. So I would see my kids go out to the court at our house, and they just couldn't get it done. You know, they just couldn't do it. And I'm kind of very much endorse what you said, but I think kids you almost have to teach them how to fail. You can't, the bubble wrap, I've heard the expression of lawnmower parents, or what's that called, Hoover parents, or the helicopter parents. Yeah, I've heard that. And I mean, I was kind of, again, I think by being older, I was 42 when my first kid was born. I think I was 50 when I was coaching our first youth team. You know, I was kind of more from the older school than the younger school.
But Bob, I think that, you know, I have a son now, I've got 2 grandkids, and I don't ever tell them. When I'm with my grandkids, I mean, I just enjoy being with my grandkids. It's their turn, it's their chance to be parents, and if I see something that, you know, all grandparents see things and go, oh, you know, I keep my mouth shut. It's his chance, it's his life, and I think everybody out here that's listening to this, they're probably listening to this to try and improve, as we all want to improve. That's why we watch things like this. I'm not in any way am I telling you, you got to go back to the 1970s and 80s and do it. No, I just think that you have to understand that your love for your children are unconditional, and there's nothing that's going to change that. You're going to always feel that, and you're always going to want what's great for them and wants what's the best for them, and that's why you're going to, I hope no, that's not quite right. It's to pick this one, you know. And you just got to understand you're hurt. In athletics, you're listening to a guy that's done it for 46 years. And I'm not going to say I'm successful, but I've lasted. As Coach Daly used to say, I'm a lifer, okay? And I believe I've lasted because of my belief in this, that you got to let them fail. You know, you just have to. You've got to, as much as it hurts, you got to let them do it, because their reaction to failure is what's going to mold them into being a champion in life, in sports, in basketball, and whatever. You don't mold champions without failure. That's an ingredient that you must have.
No, I agree. And I think I've always said that the best way to learn, I think somehow we've taken trial and error out of our kids too. You know, when I don't know if I finished the story, how I'd let them scrimmage. Well, a couple of the parents, Dow board members, went to the board and said, he's just getting lazy, always let him do a scrimmage. But then I found ways to teach them how to scrimmage. Like we had what we called habits. Like if we're scrimmaging and they don't look at the basket, we caught a violation, just like a double dribble. If they threw a rainbow pass, even if it got there, we'd say that's. If they weren't in a stance, they'd say that's low and wide. So we had 5 basic habits we're trying to teach them to play. Well, one parent in particular went all the way up to the top and said, this guy's not teaching them anything, he's just letting them play. Then RJ was in 7th grade, and his son was a junior, and they're playing in a gym at Dow High. And RJ made a pretzel out of him. I mean, because he kind of learned. What I did is I tried to teach them all through play. Once I saw that they weren't really playing as much as they used to. They couldn't make a decision or an instinct. I said, well, I'm going to change that. So anytime we taught them to dribble, it was almost always playing one-on-one or two-on-two. And then we always try to use the game to teach them and teach the fundamentals in the game. I developed in my new book, I'm calling them the if factors. And the first if factor was inexpensive and fun. Like I would go to the community center and I'd walk on this track above the community center, and my little daughter's like in third or fourth grade. There was 200 people there. The coaches had clipboards and whistles. There was a scoreboard. The coaches were yelling at them. The parents were yelling at them. Everybody's yelling at them. And I'm saying, you know what? I don't think I would like to learn it like that. I just think that there's something about letting them go out and play and have fun that develops it. Like in my book, I called it the ladder: IQ, concepts, and instincts. And once they got those three things, then I think they kind of like the game more. And the other thing that I did, Greg, is I coach now for 30 years. And I was trying to coach my 5th grade team 5-on-5. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I can't wait. You didn't help the helper. And the little girl looked at me and her little brown, I didn't do what? So I started doing more like what I called small-sided games, small numbered games. Like soccer doesn't start 11 on 11. You know, why are we teaching these kids 5-on-5 when they can't really comprehend it?
Right. But I do agree with you. I think to teach fundamentals, you got to do it plain. You know, and I made that statement about individual workout guys. I've never seen in a game a young man do something with the ball that they're being taught by these, go, through this over here, this. You've never seen that. But what I have seen is and beat the kid, all right? Because he did the live.
Mm-hmm.
You live, not just nobody's there and you do it and it's just a matter of becoming repetition. You got to do it live, and you've got to teach the fundamentals of it. The as you said a little bit ago, the stance is so important, and explosion step through, and those types of things that you can't teach if you're not playing. And I agree 100%, 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1. We still do a lot of that in our practices.
Well, I think colleges do, and I think high schools do, but I don't think youth coaches do, because they have basically an hour and a half. If you got to go, Greg, too, we can.
I don't know. I just was.
We have it.
I got all those teams. If there's a problem,
Yeah, no, I got it. They only have an hour and a half of practice, and they get into their tactics. They're out of bounds play. They don't have, to me, enough time. So then the kids do kind of go to trainers. I remember Pat Summit said once, somebody sent her a training video. A guy was from Michigan, and she goes, I don't see him doing that crap in the game. I don't see him doing that. And I think I call them circus drills. Right. Do you think the trainer would coach differently if they got paid by how far the player advanced or by the hour?
Well, there'd be a lot of kids that wouldn't get trainers then, because the trainer wouldn't take them. Mm-hmm. Because the trainer would see, well, I can't, that kid's not going to make it, so I'm going to move over here. That's an interesting concept, though. But I just, parents ask me all the time, should I go to a trainer? Should I do that? And my answer is no. Play the game. Go play it. Go play pickup. Go play the game.
And it's like, with some parents, and I'm 100% with that. Where do we go? Nobody's playing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm more like, when I talk to the youth parent, when I was coaching my youth team, one thing that really bugged me was, 2 practices a week and 3 games on the weekend. How can you have more practices or less practices than games? Right. So what I did, which I'm trying to encourage America, and the parent, it has to be more than the Uber driver or the ATM machine. You can go and sweat with your kids. So I taught real basic things that I taught the parents into saying, go home and have family practice. Like teach them how to shoot or do this shooting thing, or get some of your buddies together and play 2-on-2. And mother looked at me and said, I never really played basketball. I said, well, wait a minute. Your kid's in 5th grade. What I just told you, if you just do that, you know more than they know, and the parent can get involved with that. So we had family practice, and I think it was a big reason we went from getting beat by that team by 20, 25 to be able to beat them by 20 because we were doing things. And I said, just simply get them to play 2-on-2. Now, another thing that we did more than anybody I know, we played no dribble. Right. And we played tons of no dribble. Let me ask you this question. All the players you ever coached, how many great passers were dumb players?
Interesting question. None.
That's kind of what I said. And then somebody sent me an article. Kobe Bryant said 15, I don't know how long ago it was, the best way to teach a player how to play was no dribble. But we just did it at Wolverine camp, but it teaches spacing, it teaches cutting and moving.
And we do that in our practices. We don't. More when I ran motion. When I was a motion team, we would every day we would do 4-on-4. We call no bounce. 4-on-4, no bounce. You gotta, the guy dribbles across half court, and once he picks his dribble up, you can't bounce it again, and you want a wide open shot or a layup. And it obviously it teaches you how to play, how to get open, how to set screens. It's really, really a very effective tool in teaching offense.
We played a lot of no dribble, 2-on-2 and 3-on-3. And it's interesting you said that because you said you were the motion coach and all this, and then I took RJ to a practice. And I remember you asked me after practice, what did you think? I said, well, you've changed a lot. Yeah. You know what I mean? You were more motion, and other than using maybe a foul word once in a while, it's kind of a little bit different. Why did you make that change? Did you do it because the players coming up were different?
Yeah, absolutely.
And explain why.
The dribble drive offense became a thing, and I think it's because, you go watch a 3rd grade game right now, and what do you see? You catch, put your head down, dribble, 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 pass it. If you pass it, pick it up and put it above your head. They haven't been taught how to make a pivot. They haven't been taught how to reverse pivot. They haven't been taught how to protect the ball. All the little basic things that and so a generation of kids that dribble the ball came up, and that's why in the NBA today it's all pick and roll basketball. It's just developed. It was never that way in the NBA. It was never that way in college, and now you've rotated players up through and you've changed the game. I personally hope I'm around long enough to see the pick and roll game go away. We don't use it a lot. We do a lot of spread and drive. But you still, if you can't pass the ball. So right now we've got 70 high school teams in our building, and I just told Steve Bell, who's
I know Steve.
Yes.
RJ played for him.
Yeah.
We love Steve.
So Steve's here and he's evaluating players, and I said, we had a player in camp who Kentucky's offered, and he's only a junior, so he's going to be one of the top 15 players in the country. Just because Kentucky offered him, he's going to skyrocket into that. And Steve Bell asked me who the best player in camp was, and I pointed at that kid over there, and I said, that kid right there. And he's from a school nobody's heard of. He's 6'4", and he's one of the best rebounders I've ever seen, and he can really pass the ball. I go, that's the guy I want. Why? Because he can really pass the ball. You just don't see it or find it.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you coach baseball like I coach basketball a lot. We're kind of built on it. And I was really big on the pass, really big on the small-sided, short-sided games. My head went somewhere. What were we just talking about? You were just talking about something.
Talking about the difference.
Oh yeah, how it's changed. So to me, like I would call people, and I use this stupid analogy, but I love Boyne City and I love Lake Charlevoix. If all the fish in Lake Charlevoix were deformed for some reason, and they couldn't find out a reason why they're deformed, don't you think somebody would say, well, what's the river look like? They're flowing in from the Boyne River. Is this maybe why the game's not as smooth? And the two things that I tried to change a lot that I thought were wrong, that built up what I thought were IQ, we harped on shot selection. Even in 4th and 5th grade, we kind of went to, You know, you got to take a shot. You bet your babysitting money on. You bet your baby. No. And then the other one was the dribbling. I think the two worst causes of low IQ, all the way up in every game that I see in the high school, even college games I'll go to, is bad shot selection and over dribbling. So we took the dribble away, and then we started saying shot selection. So then we started like, oh, you can't shoot. Then some parents, well, you let so-and-so shoot. Why you won't let so-and-so shoot? And I said, well, because they make them. And so what I came up with, I called it the green light test. If they could pass these green light tests in practice, they had permission to shoot the shots in games. You know what all the parents started doing with their kids? They took them to pass that green light test. So by 8th grade, we were probably we were the best shooting team in the state, if you ask me. And all those girls got scholarships because they could shoot. Now, where did I do them the favor? I'm going to go back to 5th grade and say, you can't shoot that shot unless you make it. And then you got to learn. One thing I was pretty proud of is all 3 of my kids are in the MHSA record book. They all are there for threes in one way or the other. But they all led their team in assists and assisted turnover ratio. And I thought the no dribble created their IQ to where not only did they understand how to pass the ball and stuff, but they understood how to move to get open. They understood how to just basically play the game. And I think the IQ, if I say there's anything worse in basketball, in my opinion, the player's IQ. Sometimes I said, you know what? I'd like to be a little bug in their head, and I'd like to know what the heck were they thinking, when they made that play.
So we teach it. We use it down and distance. Okay.
Yeah, explain.
Because I'm a football guy.
Yeah.
And I'm always talking to them about down and distance. Like, you're all football fans, and if you're Detroit Lions fans, how many times did the Detroit Lions have 3rd and 10 and they throw a 3-yard pass, right? Down and distance, it's 3rd down. You got to punt if you don't get 10 yards, So when players make plays, I ask them why. Why did what's the down and distance here? What's this? And the level of, I can't say this today, but 10 years ago I'd say the level of stupidity. Now I'll say the level of misunderstanding is grown exponentially over time because what they've learned from the day they started playing the game. Nobody teaches, to me, down and distance, to you, whatever the phrase you want to use, to this coach over there, whatever the phrase is, it's learning, what is a good shot? A perfect example. A big guy gets an offensive rebound. He's got 4 people all over him, and he tries to power it up and lose it, right? Young man, you just really helped our team by getting that rebound. That doesn't mean it's a pass that you get to shoot. It's you helped the team. Now help it again by kicking it out. Let's start over and get a better shot. We just missed one. Now we get another chance. Not you, I got the rebound, so I have the right to just. And that's, this mindset of me, is, I think it's a problem.
Right. I was sitting next to a guy named Chad, and we're at a tournament. I think our daughters were in 7th grade, and he just can't take it anymore. I'm tired of watching her play like a robot. And I said, Chad, that's what I've been trying to tell you. That's how they're learning. Right. They're learning by a robot. They're not allowing them to make choices. I call them RDIs, reads, decisions, instincts. But they're not allowing this person to your point, to fail, but to try. They're running this. They're being told what to do. One of my eureka moments when I decided to write the book, and I didn't put it in the first book, but I am in the second book. I'm sitting in Petoskey, and I'm watching the JV team camp I'm running, girls basketball camp in Petoskey. Coach calls 2-play, 2. Okay, girl catches on the right wing and dribbles to the right sideline because she screwed up, right? So she gets there and she doesn't know how to pivot, so she just holds the ball over her head and they just crowd her, and there's a line on the other side. One of the things I've always thought is they go to the sideline when they're young because they think it's safe because nobody's on the other side, right? So they go to the sideline and they pick it up. Now she doesn't know how to pivot, right? Well, the other girls are waving, but nobody's moving. They're just waving to throw the ball that they can't get the ball to. Now, I taught my kids probably in 4th grade. If you don't know what to do, dribble the middle of the court. The circles are your friends. You can go right, left, back, forward. Now, you got to learn to pivot. I taught them to pivot almost automatically. Real early, we're working on pivoting.
That, parents, is... You've got to teach your kids at a young age how to pivot. You just have to.
And then let them play and then learn. Well, the other girls didn't come back to the ball, right? And then I always said, now, if you get stuck on the sideline, worst case, throw it off their leg and get the ball out of bounds. Coach calls timeout. What is the coach furious with?
Well, I would hope that he was furious that she took the ball there and that nobody else moved and that she didn't know how to square up and find an open person. That would be what I would hope.
Mm-hmm. Coach, you weren't at practice when we put in the 2-play. The coach's problem was it was the 2-play. And I think that, to me, kind of summed up where I decided to write the book.
Why did he call the 2-play if he knew she wasn't at practice?
I don't think he knew. He just called 2-play. Or maybe she was there, whatever. But the point being, the coach's answer is to 2-play. You said the exact same thing I said in my book. You got to come back and meet the ball. You dribble the ball to the middle for it. You learn to pivot. You know, when I taught pivoting to my kids, I said, me and my cousin Joni used to go to my grandmother's house. And there's a basement down there, but we're pretty young. We don't dare go down there because it's dark and smoky, you know. So finally we take a few steps down, and then finally we get to the bottom. We found a light switch, and we turned it on. We could play like crazy down there. And I kind of use that analogy with pivoting. Like when my kids were younger, they didn't want to drive in there, and they get in trouble. They don't know how to get out of there. But pivoting kind of gave them that way to explore a little bit, you know, the pivot and get out of trouble, create something for somebody else.
Well, when I speak to high school coaches, one of the things I always say to them is the biggest thing I would like you to do, if you could help me in any way, is to teach your kids to play off 2 feet. You know, and you've got to know how to pivot to do that. And you know, we're talking about pivoting at a young age, and I'm sure people are going, why is that important? Oh, it's unbelievably important. And the people that know how to play off 2 feet and can pivot, I mean, Jalen Brunson right now for the New York Knicks is the superstar of playing off 2 feet. And I mean, he did it at Villanova. I think that guy there coached it, and he won a national championship, and now he single-handedly took the Knicks to where they went because that guy can play off 2 feet and pivot and make plays.
Making plays and I think pivoting is huge, and that's when we taught them to play through a pivot. Like we did these, what we're doing now with kids, but we'll start them in a double team. We're playing 3-on-3 small-sided, so they're in a double team. The other two have to try to get open. This person has to pivot till they can pass out of there, and then cut. Then we just play normal 3-on-3. I want to start a 3-on-3 called Bobby T's 3-on-3, where I started experimenting with young kids. I kind of dove into it. Like, I don't know how many people coach for 30 years, work camps for 45, then coach their youth kids for 25. You know, I kind of did it backwards. But we'll play Bobby T's 4-pass only. You only get 4 passes. You can't dribble it. And you got to kick it out. Like if your team gets a rebound, you got to kick it behind the 3. That's 1 pass. Now you only got 3, so you got to move and cut. And then we'll play that as a competition. But then when I'm teaching somebody, I'll just start them in certain situations, like double teamed. So they got to pivot to get out of it. Then we'll play. And we'll play till there's Bobby T's. And sometimes we'll put the ball in the butt or whatever they call it, where you drive around them. They help the helper. So we tell them to help the helper and kick out. I think there's a lot that parents can do, but even if they don't know anything about basketball, they weren't coaches, get them to play 3-on-3, no dribble, you know, and give them I experiment with the FIBA. I don't know, you remember Trevor Huffman probably, and his younger brother Damon. They work out in Grand Blanc a lot, but you know what I found with the FIBA 3-on-3 with 15 seconds? You talk about over dribbling with the young kids. Oh my God, there was more over dribbling than that, Greg, than there ever was in 5-on-5. The best kid just gets the ball and dribbles and goes, you know. What else? Let's just say you're the king of basketball. You are. what would you do to change it? And I'm basically putting my life in. I've developed things like I interviewed for a girls' high school basketball job the other day, and they're saying, what would you do differently? And I was saying I would teach them more in play. I would do more of this. What would you do to eliminate? I always say if it's a problem at the start of the rope, it's usually a problem at the end of the rope. If it's a problem at the end of the rope, it's probably a problem at the start of the rope. What would you change about youth basketball?
Well, if I were king of the world, nobody'd be happy because I would get rid of I wouldn't allow national tournaments, state tournaments, and things like that until 14, 12, 13, 14 years old. I wouldn't allow you to travel all over the country and play. I wouldn't allow you to have better uniforms than your high school. You know, you've taken the high school and the pride of this community and playing in that high school out of it, and made the youth off basketball season more important than the actual high school season. And I don't like that.
I'm going to interject. I don't think you'd make a lot of people mad. You know, I think there's more people.
Because they'll save money.
And the whole thing, you know, and I look back at what we did, I think there'd be a lot of people, okay, let's develop better players, but let's do it in a more sensible thing.
Yeah. It's right now, you know, there was a thing on the internet of this little team of 7 or 8, maybe 9-year-old kids, and they're making shots. They're wearing these outrageous uniforms. They're making shots, and they're talking crap. Did you see that on the
No, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they're talking crap, and they're, you know, it's mimicking the professionals, or, you know, and it's like you watch certain coaches and AU and that young, and it's like their chance to be Tom Izzo on the sideline, you know. And the reality of my job is everybody sees you on TV and they see you yelling at the sidelines or yelling at a ref net. We play 35 games at the most a year, and games are 2 hours. So for 70 hours out of the year, I'm on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. Doing all these things people see that, oh, that's cool. I would want to be able to, you know, yell at an official or stalk the sidelines or whatever. The other million of hours in a year, I got to teach and coach. That's way more important and way more hours. And an AAU coach does that and doesn't have the practice time, as you've said 50 times already today. Take all those games and limit the amount of games you can play. And instead of playing 4 games in a weekend, how about have 4 hours in practice? Mm-hmm. 2 hours each day. How about teaching the fundamentals of the game instead of just putting 12 plays in and going and playing somebody, and then you get your butt kicked, or you press and you won, and then you got to play again in 2 hours, and nobody even remembers that they lost or they won or they care. It's just you're grinding out these games, and I think it's, as you said, if I'm the king, to me it's detrimental to the game. And it's like when I was a baseball coach, 12 games 8-year-olds, 15 games 9-year-old. We'll go to 20 as 10s, right? And then we're going to practice them. And you know what? If you don't want to come to practice, you don't have to, but I probably won't play you in the games because I want you to love it. I want you to be there. I want to make practices friendly. I want to make them, you know, exciting and encouraging. I want you to have a ton of fun, and I want you to love the game. And there's ways to do that. There are lots of ways to do that and still teach.
Well, we're going to wrap it up, but I want to ask a couple things. Coach Kampe has one of probably the most successful team camps in the state, in the Midwest, and it's going on. He's given me an hour, and I appreciate it. But you already answered one of the questions, really, and that's the end question, but I will come back to it. But I believe that we got to teach, like when Ellie and Maisie were pretty good, we had the local trainers, right? They would call me up, and they would say, hey, I'll work out with them for free. Don't tell anybody, but I'm going to put them on the webpage. So then I went and I watched, and they asked the question. I said, do you want truth? Do you want harmony? And I mean, well, I want the truth. I said, the problem I had is you had Ellie and Maisie and every other kid in line doing the exact same thing. Well, Ellie's a lot different than Maisie. Why are you trying to make an apple and orange? And that's what I really think about the stoic way that youth are learning, that I thought I've done a pretty good job of changing. Maisie wants to hesitate and go by you. Ellie wants to maybe push and shoot. So I think we're almost judging a fish's ability to climb a tree, if you would. We're trying to make every player the same. We're trying to clone them. And I told my kids, I grew up in the 70s. We protested Vietnam, dress codes, drugs. I don't care, we protested. If somebody would have said, you go stand in the corner while we run a dribble drive off, I'd say, BS, man. I want to play with those dudes on TV. I want to play. And I think we're taking a lot out of that, is what I'm saying. And I think we're cloning players. We're not allowing them to find out who they are, what their game is, why they love it. Like, how many times did you go to your park and play? Because you played in pickup, you figured out what you could do. So then you figured out how to go to the park and play and practice it, right? And I think some of these kids, they have no idea. Like a lot of these kids, Greg, they'll go and they'll say, okay, what do you want me to do next? Why don't you go and work on your game? That might be speaking Japanese.
No, they would have no idea how to go work on their game.
Right. And to you people out there, what I'm saying, that's what's going to happen if you do. You know what I mean? I'm trying to say the grail.
Well, I think there has to be a roadmap. And again, it can't be one size fits all. What you're saying is 100% true. But there are, at the earliest of ages, there are basic fundamentals that have to be taught, and they have to be taught. They can't be taught the same way every day, because you'll lose kids. They'll run to the video games. They'll run somewhere else. It's got to be anxious to come in that day and find out, what are we doing today, and how much fun is this going to be? And you kind of sneak in the fundamental, right? And then, at our level, if I'm going to go beat Michigan State, I'm not going to try and teach a guy to do something he can't do. So by the time they get to me, if they can't go left, I don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put you in a position to go right. I'm going to I recruited you because I think you're good enough, so I'm going to do everything I can as a coach to if you're an 8, I'm going to try and make you a 10. If you're a 4 at something and I make you a 6, that's still not good enough. So this formative ages is where they've got to learn the base, the pivot, the catch, the head up, to be able to see open people and pass, the mindset to pass. The encouragement from somebody of what a great pass. It might not have been a good pass, but if you keep telling somebody you're good at passing, they're going to want to pass. And, just those types of things at the young age. Instead of saying, how many points did you get? How many this? Because I'm going to tell you something. You might have an 8-year-old that never scores. And you're yelling at him that he's got to score, he's got to take more shots. And by the time he's 16 or 17, he's going to score a lot, because he's going to grow and develop, and he's going to know the game. And his shot's going to become fundamentally sound. And maybe at 8 years old, he was embarrassed that he couldn't get the ball to the rim, or you can't, you got to shoot, you got to score, you're never going to do this if you don't score. No, you just got to learn the game. And then with age and strength and all the other things involved in it, if they know the game and they're fundamentally sound, they're going to play. They're going to play, because 90% of the other kids aren't going to be what that is, fundamentally sound.
And we're on the same page, so you would think the kids should learn the fundamentals while playing. Yeah.
I don't think you can learn a fundamental not playing.
There's a lot of kids getting taught. Like when I would watch my young kids, they learned how to pass. They went across free throw line through a chest pass and the bounce pass and the overhead. They learned layups by the layup lines. And then they got in a game, they would freak out. So one of my things is, let's make practice harder in games. Last question, Coach Royce, and let you go back to camp, and I appreciate the time. There's 20 players out there, they're 5th graders. We're going to draft it up. Okay? You get first, I get second, third, we got even game at 10. They're 5th graders. When they're seniors, we're going to play a game, winner take all, for $1 billion. I asked this question to Coach Thomas, and he said he's going to give it all to the churches of Saginaw.
Okay.
I'm keeping the money.
I keep the money.
Okay,
too.
good. So we got basically 7 years. We're allowed the same amount of time they're typically getting now. We can't send academy and say, okay, we're going to go 24/7. We can't do it. We got to use the same amount of time. Are you going to teach the kids the way they're learning now? Would you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm going to tell anyone out there, you can give me any AAU coach you want, and I'll let you pick the first 10.
Well, you did it in baseball.
Right. I'll let you pick the first 10. I'll take the other 10. And by the time they're seniors, I'll be.
Now, we had some pretty good players, but we were the angry tomatoes. And we weren't the, we didn't have the whole garb.
Right.
But I appreciate it. And then why is it taught that way? Greg, I talked to you, I talked to Ginsburg, I've talked to Dean, I've talked to Gazelko, I'm talking to everybody, I've talked to them on the phone, I asked them this question. If nobody would do it that way, why are we doing it that way?
Because right now, the people that are doing it are in it and doing it either for their child, but we live in this bubble wrap world, or they want to win. They want to win. There's no long game being played. There's no, let's look at this kid and how are we going to get this kid to that playing as a senior. They're into it for right now. And you got to, with your kids, if you want them to be successful, it's the long game. It's the game where, you know what, I want you to be the best player at our high school. And how are we going to get you there? I want you want to play college basketball, I want you to too, son. I love you and I want you to play. All right? So let's find out the best way to get you there. And love it, because if you don't love it, you're not going to get there. And so if I'm on a team that loses at 5th grade and I go 1-14 in 5th grade, I'm probably not going to like it. Probably gonna get made fun of. I'm gonna be playing video games, because on the video game I can play NCAA basketball and I can make Oakland the championship. Even though Oakland's not a championship team, I can do it. You're gonna lose them, and so you got to play the long game, and you've got to understand how to get there in the long game.
And I think we're saying the same. I'm saying I don't know if I can change the whole thing. Like when I coached my team, the parents were very interesting. Like, I don't tell you how to make boxes. I don't tell you. This is what I've done for a long time. But they're very interesting. I said, I swam that Shawshank Redemption, and I went down that, and I had to build a float to get above that crap. But just because the system is different doesn't mean the old things that have worked should be gone. And I think you got to find a way to blend it in. You know what I mean? And that's what I think we've done.
Well, I was very fortunate in the baseball that, these were kids that, got cut.
You're the Bad News Bears.
Right. And then you've got Rick Reed, they go home and they turn TV on and there he is umping a game. And then they've got a coach who they go home in the winter and turn TV on and there he is making an idiot of himself. So they respected that. And we had this conversation. I had this conversation with them that, this is going to be fun and we're going to slow walk this, and it's a long, this is for the future. I don't care if we win or lose. When we were 8, 9, 10 years old, I didn't care, and I told them that. We never talked about we ended up winning a lot, and I think one of the reasons was because we didn't care.
But you taught the things that win. Right. Thanks, Greg.
My pleasure.
I'll let you go back to camp.
Right.
I appreciate you. Really interesting to me to review everything that Coach Kampe had to say. The one thing that I really took a lot of delight in, and wish that I was more of a moderator to keep picking his brains on it, but he had a very similar background to mine when I wrote the book, in that he coached a group of guys that got cut from a league. Basically, they didn't get a team, they didn't get picked up, so he teamed up with another gentleman, and Greg agreed to coach his team with kids that got cut. And the biggest thing when you listen to it was they all played in college. He had a very good success rate, and he taught them very similar styles, but in a different sport, how to begin with the end in mind. Can't help but miss how he was stressing to parents to make your kids tougher. Make them tougher. I think the term he used that kind of caught me off guard was saran wrap them, or don't bubble wrap them. Don't protect them. Don't let them fall and let them crack and let them get back up. Something that I've always felt, but in the terminology that he used it, and if you see his teams play, you would know that they're hard-nosed. But basically his message is let them fail. Point well taken was really, as a longtime coach like Kampe, a longtime coach like myself, we've seen the game circle around and offenses come and offensive goes. And his point is there's really nothing new in the game of basketball. There's nothing new, but the key is to make the players solid. And like when he coaches baseball team, or when he's coaching his team now, is to keep it solid and improve them as players. And with kids, that was his biggest advice. Don't look for the quick fix. There's nothing new, but you got to go out and work for it. I really liked his comment. You picked up on, I always ask the question, if we divided 20 kids up and we first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and we divided 2 teams of 20 of fifth graders, then in 7 years they're going to play for $1 billion. Would you teach them like they're taught today? And every person, and Coach Kampe's no different, he's like, heck no, I'm not going to coach him like he's going to today. And then he went one step further, so if you know Coach Kampe, this is a story you'd appreciate. He said, not only would I not coach him, I'll give, and he looked to the camera and said to the parents, I'll give you the top 10, and I'll take the next 10, and I'll beat them doing it a different style, doing it with the end in mind. So I hope you really enjoyed it. I thought it was very insightful, and I liked the way that he offered his opinions. I thought he had a lot of great points, and if I'm a youth parent, I'm listening to what he had to say. I want to thank Coach Kampe again for being part of the conversations with the old man in the gym.